welcome to the video, guys. We're going to talk about a few things today. First of all, we're going to start with Dolby Atmos, and next we're going to talk about the subwoofer implementation in the room, how it's tuned, positioning, etc. Then we're going to go ahead and discuss equalization, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time on the equalization of the room as well. Then we're going to go into details on how the parametric equalization works in relation to the room measurements in the room, primarily focusing on subwoofers in this episode. So to get a comprehensive understanding of the Atmos implementation in the Beast Unleashed theater room, we have to take a look at the original engineering drawing for speaker positioning. So if you take a look at the purple dots, that is where the Atmos channels currently are installed. We followed this diagram essentially down to the inch. If you notice, the purple circles, which are the Atmos speakers, they align with the surround speakers. So you see the front pair of Atmos channels align with the front side surrounds, or they can also be configured as wides. You'll see the middle also align with the side surrounds that flank the main listening position in the front row, and the rear Atmos speakers align with the second row surround channels as well. So it's very important to point that out because especially for objects moving across the room as opposed to front to back or back to front, this positioning is very important, and I'm happy to report that it works very well. This is a little overview of how I have the Atmos speakers set up. Using the DSP, this is the DSP app. You'll see more of this later on. So this represents the 6 Atmos speakers and relative to the main listening position. Main listening position being right here. So currently, your Atmos options are 2 channels or 2 speakers or 4 speakers. I wanted 6. I think it's forward thinking because eventually devices will come out that can process 6 native channels. Right now only the Triad Altitude can do that. So front left, front right, rear left, rear right. So the top middles, what to do with the top middles? Well, the top middles receive the signal from the front, from the top fronts, and I add a delay and then make them decrease the volume on them because they're literally right over the main listening position. And this effect is not to be underestimated. So here is how I have the Atmos set up in the digital signal processor, the QSC software. Alright, so if you take a look here, I have routers here and here. These split the signals for the front. I shouldn't say split, they duplicate the signals for the front left and front right Atmos speakers. And once those signals are duplicated, then it sends them to the middle Atmos channels. So the front and the middle are getting the same signal. However, there is a delay implemented in the middles. So if you take a look here, first things first. All right, so this is the front Atmos left, and the middle Atmos left takes the same signal. So if I just double click there, you'll see that there's a 2 millisecond delay. And then right here, this is for the rear left Atmos, and just for measurement's sake, this actually ended up sounding a little better. It helped with the pans, and that could be because there is a top middle channel, so it helps to have a slight delay on the rears for the pans, because there are more speakers. I will say that having a top middle set in addition to a top front and top rear it really does make sure that no matter what row you're in, you are in the best seat in the house. Just regardless of row. I've made my main listening position the rear row or the front row, and the Atmos experience is essentially the same. Which is, it didn't come overnight. I mean, a lot of testing went into it, a lot of testing with delays and so some other things. But so this is what I found to be the ideal for this room as far as Atmos. These are the subwoofers on the rear wall. There are 8 total in the room. These are the rear 4. They are the Seaton Sound F18 subwoofers. There are 4 on this back wall, and then there are 2 in each of the front corners. The combined output on these subwoofers is just something that has to be experienced. I can't even describe it properly, but just wanted you to take a look, see the drivers in use, the way the cabinet looks. So these are all passive. They're powered by a RackAmp that is currently installed in the equipment room. And this is the Seaton Sound rack amplifier. Speaker power is the OEM for this amplifier. Now, there's 2 channels, 4,000 watts each, and I want to take a look here at, because I'm going to go over what I love about this amplifier. So you have the gain control, yes. LF adjust is amazing. This will give a boost, like this is the neutral position, but this will give a boost to the low frequencies. If you don't have a dedicated DSP, then this will allow you to literally just boost the frequencies under around 50 hertz, so that you know, for those of us who are true bass enthusiasts, we really like the ultra low frequencies, and this will boost them so they don't start to, or to compensate for the roll off that normally occurs in the tracks. You can set your crossovers. Just keep this at max, because now that's always done digitally. Set your delays as well. Again, if you can't do this digitally, then these knobs will help get you there. So in a setup that does not have a dedicated DSP, which you know, that's the majority of setups, these really give you a way to customize and improve your bass experience that otherwise simply just would not be available. I know it wasn't available to me at all before I got my DSPs. So I take my hat off to Seaton Sound for using this speaker power amp. And now for a little bit of fun. Okay, so we have this subject of immersion. You know, what is the ultimate immersion experience? Right now, that is Dolby Atmos that provides us with the ultimate of what is possible within the home. So, within that home sphere, how do you get the most out of your Atmos experience? Notice I didn't say to get the most out of your Atmos setup. I said how do you get the most of your Atmos experience? You can set Atmos up according to the books and walk away, and you can have a very enjoyable experience. However, it's not necessarily going to be the most enjoyable experience you can have. I've found in testing many movies that the type of movie does play a role in what type of Atmos experience I'm going to have. If I'm watching a big budget blockbuster action movie, then I'm actually going to mix my Atmos channels and my surround channels. I'm going to boost the gain in them a little because they tend to get lost in the cacophony of the entire surround field. It's something I haven't experienced in the past. I don't know if it's because it's a different sized room. I'm not sure. And then again, we are talking about Atmos. I've never had Atmos before now. So with the implementation of Atmos, I give a boost of anywhere between 4 to 6 decibels to the Atmos ceiling channels and the surround channels, depending on which one. So I think the front speakers have a boost for the big budget action flicks. The front surround speakers, which are towards the front of the room, they have a boost of I think about 2 or 3 decibels. The speakers directly flanking the main listening position, they have a boost of 1 maybe. and then the surround speakers flanking the rear row, I think those have a boost of about 4 decibels or so. And then the rear surrounds, they get about a 6 decibel boost. Atmos speakers as well, they range between 1 and 3 decibel boost. No, I'm sorry. No, actually, as a matter of fact, all of the Atmos channels have received at least a 5 to 7 decibel increase. And once again, this is all based on listening. Now, there is a mode that I use for watching just regular movies that are not big blockbuster movies, and the surround field is very active. It's very enjoyable, and it's the other mode that I have with the surrounds and Atmos channels hot. That is actually not as enjoyable, but you know, for just standard surround watching, if we're going to watch a flick. The other night, my wife and I, we watched the movie Sing, an animated flick with our baby. It was hilarious. It was an amazing movie. A movie like that we watched, you know, just after a standard calibrated levels. But a movie like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which I've recently seen, that has, I mean, that definitely benefited from the boost that is inherent to the configuration I've designated for action movies. So I just wanted to explain that concept. You know, you're not tied down to what the Dolby guidelines say. You know, they're not in your room, and frankly, they don't necessarily like what you like. So, you know, just calibrate your levels to levels that are going to be absolutely enjoyable for you. If you like to hear surrounds, you like to hear Atmos, give them a boost. If you're going to make it conditional and you have a way where you can switch back and forth between configurations quickly, do it. All right, that's my advice. Today we're going to take a look at the digital signal processor that I'm using. The room has 17 speakers, 8 subwoofers, right? So how do you make that work when receivers and processors today are only capable of essentially 11 channels plus subwoofers? So you have to pick 7.1.4 or, you know, 9.1.2. So, you know, they force you into picking. However, with my situation, 17 speakers all around the room, 8 subwoofers. All right. How do I deal with that? You're going to see in this episode. Stay tuned. This is the QSC QSys Designer software. So I use this to configure the speakers in my desired arrangement. There's a lot going on the screen, so at least for me, I separated them into different groups using the group box function, which I found to be very useful. So we have the input group to the left. We have the configuration group next to that, and then we have the speaker area, which contains the bed group, the Atmos group, and the subwoofer group. And then finally to the right, we have the output group. So in the input group, right here, this is where the inputs from the processor are represented. As I mentioned, the processors only have 11.1 right now, or essentially you have to pick from that. So, you know, 7.1.4, 9.1.2, and so on and so forth. But you have 11 channels and 1 subwoofer channel to use. So, keeping in that vein, my processor, there are only 12 overall inputs. So that's why there are 12 inputs represented there. This is just an RMS meter for what's being received. These here in the input group, these are my presets. I'm going to go over those a little later on. And then this is test and measurement. This is just this is a box that's useful at any stage. I just put it in this corner. It's not actually part of the input group. All right, so for the configuration group now, we have the mixer, the 12x12 mixer here, and that's what spits the channels out so that the DSP can do its thing. So notice down here, subwoofer signal router, that goes down, low pass filter, that goes down to the delay, which is very important when you're dealing with subwoofers, a parametric equalizer, low shelf equalizer, extremely important. Yeah, very important. the more I get into equalizations, the more I realize just how important that is for dialing subwoofers in. Alright, so in this setup, there are 4 subwoofer signals. Now, there are 8 subwoofers in the room, 4 in the front, 4 in the back. Each subwoofer is an 18-inch subwoofer, and so they're equalized as groups. All of the subwoofers on the front wall, those receive a single signal. All the subwoofers on the rear wall, they receive a single signal. Now, I have wired for a subwoofer on the right wall and a subwoofer on the left wall as well, and they were prescribed in my acoustic plan by Acoustic Frontiers, which is the company that did my layout, theater layout, and acoustic plan. I highly recommend them. So I have to get them, but I'm having trouble finding subwoofers with the output that I need, that can fit in a 6-inch or less cabinet. So I'm probably going to actually make my own, but that's digressing there. So the right wall and left wall subwoofers are not currently being used. You see towards the bottom of the screen, but the front wall and the rear wall are. So I'll get into how those are equalized later on. So you see from the top down to the right of the screen, there is left, center, right, surround left 1, surround left 2, surround left 3, surround right 1, surround right 2, surround right 3, back left, back right, Atmos front left, Atmos middle left, Atmos rear left, Atmos front right, Atmos middle right, Atmos rear right. And then we have the subwoofers. So that is the speaker configuration for the room. All right, let's get into the equalization piece. Okay, so these are how the subwoofers measured before adding equalization. So the green line are the rear subs with no equalization. The red line are the front subs with no equalization, and the purple line are are all subwoofers happening at the same time. So front 4, rear 4, firing simultaneously. All right, so you can take a look. There are some dips. Now this is this scale is every 5 decibels. So you see we're at around 97.5 at 3 hertz decibels. Then it dips down at 5 hertz. It dips down pretty significantly. Just over 20 decibels for the front subs. The rear subs that dips around 4.5. So, but you see here, running the 2 subs together takes care of both of those dips, and then you actually just have a little peak. And this is all academic. I mean, you're not hearing anything at this level. You're feeling your eyeballs rattle in your skull, basically. So, all right. So then we start climbing. We hit 10 hertz, and then both subs together at 110 decibels. And again, this is not this is a basic, just a basic measurement. I did this at a fairly low volume. I mean, we can go significantly higher here. All right, so you see the front subs and the rear subs are somewhat on the same path with about a maybe 7 decibel difference at 20 hertz, and then they're pretty decent. There's another maybe 5 decibel difference at 50 hertz, and then we have dips. We have the front subs dipping at 70 hertz. We have the rear subs dipping significantly at around 65 hertz. That's a pretty big drop. What is that, about 30? No, about 20, just under 20. Yeah, that is a significant drop there. But it's, that's why we have equalization. So, and the front subs also suffer from a dip. It just happens to be at 85 hertz. Running both subs together, it curtails that dip by maybe 6 decibels. Then I mean, there's still a significant dip there, and it just changes the dip to happen at around 81 hertz. The left portion represents the front and rear subs with no equalization. The center column represents the low shelf equalization which is what I use to get a nice bass boost under 50 hertz. And the right column represents the subwoofer equalization that I implemented for a couple of reasons actually. You'll notice that it may not be directly apparent that this is treating this. That's because I had to also make some tweaks with the combined response in the front and rear subs to get a good flat response. So that's why they may not, you won't see me pulling up exactly where a dip is, or in this case, you don't see a dip in the left column where I've implemented a dip here at 35 hertz. So I just want to let you know, yeah, that's just due to trying to EQ the combined response. Okay, so right here, this just gives you a look here. So you see there's a dip at 80 hertz. Well, I can't even make out that number. It's a snapshot, but that is an 80 hertz dip, 60 hertz dip, and 80 hertz dip, and then the 150 hertz dip. So I actually did the low shelf equalizer last. So I had to pull down something at 35 when I reran the combined response. Then I boosted the 150 to 160 to actually make this dip a little less significant, and it did make a small dent at the 150 hertz. But after a while, I just stopped because it wasn't worth it. I'm not crossing over that high. Down here, these are the rear subs, no equalization. These are at 10 hertz intervals, and you'll see that there's a dip here. I think that's also at 80 hertz. Yeah, that's an 80 hertz dip, and then also at 150. It's very interesting how the subwoofers at the front and the subwoofers at the rear, they measured fairly similarly. It's a good thing, I guess. It's a testament to the room design. I had an acoustic plan drafted up. I'm not finished implementing the acoustic plan because it is very expensive, so I don't have all of my treatments. But these aren't bad measurements for an incomplete treatment plan in the room. All right, so yeah, just wanted to give you this overview so you could kind of follow the thought process. Here's a look at the QSC user control interface application that I put together to control my listening experience. So I have beast mode, extreme mode, night listening, native channels, Atmos only, ARC setup, and LCR plus non-native channels. So beast mode is essentially my perfect calibration. Everything is exactly the way I want it. It's nice, it's full, it's aggressive, and this is how I watch most of my movies. Now, extreme mode, that adds gain between 4 to 6 decibels depending on what the channel is to the surrounds and the Atmos channels. I only use this mode when watching a big budget blockbuster film, like I just watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Amazing movie, by the way. However, I'm noticing that with these big budget flicks, the standard mixing is not what, it's not, I would say the standard mixing on these big budget flicks does not necessarily align with the expectations of enthusiasts such as myself. They can tend to be drowned out at times, and I know that this is not an issue with the system setup, because when watching a non-blockbuster film, the balance is perfect. The surrounds are perfect, so side surrounds, rear surrounds, Atmos. I'm extremely immersed. But with these big budget flicks, I don't know if there's a standard operating procedure for major action flicks, but the bed channels and the Atmos, they need a little boost to come out, because a lot of times they can be drowned out, or they're competing with the left, center, and right channels. So I add a boost to the surrounds and the Atmos channels, and this is after a lot of testing. I mean, each one is dialed into a specific decibel value, and after a lot of testing, this is exactly what I like for those type of movies. Night listening, it decreases the subwoofer level by about 8 decibels. Now, I very rarely use this because this theater is it's very soundproofed. You know, 3 layers of drywall on clips and channel with green glue in between the drywall layers. This and most of the walls are decoupled, and they're decoupled from concrete walls. So the room is very soundproofed. However, when you're talking about 8 subwoofers, each of them 18 inches, having 18-inch drivers, that's a lot of bass, and vibrations do sometimes get to the floor directly above. They don't get to the upstairs, to the third level where people sleep, which is the most important. You don't want to feel any vibrations there, but you do feel vibrations above if I'm really, really pushing the volume. So night listening is just for those times where, say if my wife falls asleep on the couch, or I wouldn't even say that because it's not, the vibration is not significant. But if the baby falls asleep directly above, because our family room is directly above this theater, so it's directly above. So if the baby falls asleep in a family room, then the vibrations, they have not woken her up. But I'm not taking any risks, because oh my goodness, when you have a newborn and you wake that baby up, whew, that's it for hours. So night listening is a precaution. I think I've only used it one time so far, and that was just one time. Native channels. This is actually mostly for demo purposes. When I want only the native channels output by the Anthem AVM60 processor, and I don't want the matrix side surrounds or the matrix Atmos surrounds. So this will be a strictly 7.1.4 presentation. That's native channels. Atmos only. Sometimes I like to listen to what the Atmos content in a movie is. So if I hit Atmos only, it will mute all channels except for the Atmos speakers and the subwoofers, because I want to hear what exactly are the Atmos channels doing in this flick. Are they active? Are they inactive? And I'll show you another way that I can do that as well, but I prefer to listen. But there's also a meter that I'll show you in this app in a second. Arc setup. This sets all gains to neutral, which is for this DSP it's 0, which makes it a pass-through. It also mutes the matrix channels as well, so it also makes the system a 7.1.4 system. I set this to make it a 7.1.4 pass-through so that I can run arc, and I already have my presets for delay and the gain once arc is run, so I just engage those again after I run arc. LCR plus non-native channels. This is also mostly for demo purposes. If I want to turn off the 7 native, well not the 7, but if I want to turn off the 4 native surround channels, which are, because typically you have a pair of side surrounds and a pair of rear surrounds, and then that's it, then your LCRs. So this turns off the standard pair of side surrounds and it turns off the rear surrounds. So all I hear are the matrix surrounds. This lets me know how they're doing. It lets me make sure that they're appropriately reproducing the sound, and I do it for demos, is to if I want to know what's the rear getting, or what the front side surrounds are getting. It's really for me. I've only demoed it for myself. It's just an FYI. So all right, so that's my mode selector. Now for the gain control, this is an iPad. For the gain control, when I hit that, then I have representations of my speakers. So you have the 3 Triad CinemaPlus Platinums up there, and then the gold LCRs surrounding. I have my subwoofers in the same place that they are in the room, and then I have my Atmos, which are the RSL C34E. The E stands for Edgeless. So in this I can do quite a bit. I have it configured where I can mute it. I don't know if you can see the light of it. If I hit this, it mutes it. And if I hit it again, it will unmute it. Holding this is a slider. If I press down and raise this, it'll raise the gain, or it'll lower the gain. So this also lets me see where I am volume-wise. So for instance, I'm gonna hit extreme mode and go back to gain control, and you can see where the volumes are. When you see negative, this is due to the speakers are very, very sensitive, and the amps are very, very powerful. So if the gain is too high in the DSP, then you hear a slight what's the best word? Best way to describe it is the noise floor is raised. So you hear a slight I don't want to say hiss, but you hear a slight sound coming from the speaker. So, and the reason why you see the -5s is because I raised the side surrounds and the Atmos so significantly. So in order for them not to drown out the LCRs, everything is done to scale. So keep the LCRs where they are. I raise that, I raise the side surrounds, and then I lower everything universally so that, and then all I do is raise the volume in the processor to get back to my normal listening levels. Okay? Here's an example of night listening. Hit night listening, go back to the gain controls. You see the subwoofers, -8, -8. Now here's a mode that I really like, the decibel meter screen. I use this to track audio. It lets me know what's getting what. A good example of this is I recently set my Anthem processor to process the top middle and the top rear, thinking that, you know, it would be more visceral, and I thought I loved it until I pulled this meter up. So my main listening position is directly below the top middles, but setting it in the processor top middles, the way Atmos is if you select top middle, then those are the only two speakers that are outputting an Atmos signal. So the rears, the top rear, were getting nothing. So I saw that using this meter. I was like, wait a minute, you know, the Atmos rear channels are getting nothing. Nothing's coming out. And, you know, so this helps you know, understand how much signal is getting to each speaker. And it's very helpful in testing. It's very helpful in setting speakers up, especially if you want a balanced system, because, I mean, automatic room correction can only take you so far. You need to tweak it so that you have a fully balanced system. You know, your ears, you know, especially when you're talking about larger rooms. Smaller rooms, I think it's less of an issue. In my last theater, it was significantly smaller than this one, and I was usually happy with just a few minor tweaks to the subwoofers after running auto EQ. But for a larger room like this one, you have to tweak it. You have to tweak it until you are getting the volumes from all the speakers that you want to hear from your main listening position. If you have a fully functioning immersive audio system and you are not listening to your music using all of your channels, you are doing yourself a severe disservice. Use them all.